Welcome to Aspen Leading Edge. This is Patty Roberts from St. Mary's University School of Law, and today's guest is a fellow dean, Melanie B. Jacobs, who is the dean of Louis D. Brandeis School of Law in Louisville, correct?
Yes, so it's the Louis D. Brandeis School of Law in Louisville.
Louis in Louisville. Okay, I've got it now. So you are the 27th dean at the Brandeis College of Law, and before that, you were interim dean at Michigan State University College of Law for a year and a half, I think, and you had been a professor there for 20 years. So now you are like a dean at your own law school. And what is it that prompted you back when you were at Michigan State to consider throwing your hat in the ring to be interim dean and then to continue being a dean at a law school?
At Michigan State, I had held a variety of leadership positions, from overseeing our graduate and international programs to admissions to being associate dean of academic affairs. So when there was a need for someone to step in as interim dean, it sort of fit given the work that I was doing. I was academic dean at the time, and I felt very grateful to have faculty support to step in. I certainly didn't know on January 1st, 2020, that interim deanship would be quite so exciting with a pandemic. But it was also a very interesting and rewarding time. At the time, the law school at Michigan State was still a private legal and financial entity nestled within a public university, and we were going through the full integration process, and that had been set for August of 2020. And in fact, when the provost hired me to be interim dean, my letter said, "You must complete the integration on time." And I share that because, yes, it was so complicated to complete that process and manage all of the difficulties surrounding a quick move to remote education in the middle of a pandemic, and making sure that people were healthy and making sure that we could figure out exams and the bar and all of that. But it was also strangely exhilarating and rewarding. And I feel like as a fellow dean, you can probably understand that. Hopefully some of the listeners can as well. And so when my interim deanship ended, I was completing at that time about 20 years at Michigan State. And I thought, okay, I really enjoy teaching and I enjoy my scholarship, but there has been tremendous joy in the problem solving that comes from being a dean. And maybe that sounds counterintuitive, and I can't pretend that every day is a joy in terms of the problem solving.
But there's always plenty to do, plenty of problems to solve, right?
Always plenty to do. And it does feel like a real win, even to move the needle a little bit, right? Even if it's a smaller problem, let alone bigger. And I don't mean to identify everything as problem in a negative way. I just mean it as problem solving. So when I thought about another deanship, I was interested in joining a public university. Even though I'm the product of private college and private law school, I really came to appreciate the mission and the access mission that I saw at a large public institution, research institution at MSU. So I was looking for another public university. The University of Louisville is an R1, Research 1 university. It's also one of 79 universities nationwide recognized as being both an R1 and Carnegie Community Engaged University. And I have a background in public service. There is a real emphasis on public service here at Brandeis. We were one of the first law schools to add as a graduation requirement a 30-hour public service component. So the combination of a public university that was also a research university that has a real community focus, public service focus, and a place that had great bones and needed a little time and attention, that all intrigued me. And so I feel really lucky that I'm here.
Well, it sounds like they're very lucky to have you, but I'm glad you made your way to Brandeis. That was some year you had to be an interim dean that ended up being during the global pandemic. I also had the pleasure, the challenge of serving at that time, but then to also be spearheading this integration into the broader university, that must have had challenges that one couldn't have predicted.
That was an incredibly challenging year. And of course, we've known each other for a number of years. And so I think you also know that it was about a week before the full integration in August that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So it was a real interesting, when we talk about work-life balance, which I don't think exists, I think there's a work-life juggle and we struggle with it. Juggle struggle to have both these two incredibly challenging professional aspects of my life, right? Trying to make sure that this integration would go smoothly and managing pandemic and so forth. And then also managing the personal. I had a 9-year-old son at the time who was on Zoom school. It was a lot, but I'm here and feeling well and really, I'm glad to share that story with you because it reminds me that if I could get through 2020, I really can get through anything.
I think we forget sometimes about those experiences, right? It's like childbirth, and women don't remember, they say, because then we'd never do it again. There were so many challenges, but there were some wins and successes, as you certainly had professionally. But thank God that you had them personally too. And I'm so glad to hear you're feeling well. It is a juggle and a struggle, and to have a young child, that I'm just glad you're in better times now. And one of the things that I love about you as a dean, Melanie, is we share the experience of having been legal writing teachers and clinical teachers before we were associate deans and deans. And tell the audience a little bit about how that enriches your leadership as a dean.
I was incredibly fortunate a few years out of law school to get a job at Harvard Law School in their legal services center. So basically a full service legal aid clinic that was affiliated with the law school. And in some ways, that was one of the best jobs I ever had just because the community was tremendous. And it felt really good at night to know that hopefully I had made someone's life a little bit better, or at least I had tried. So that was wonderful. But I did that for 2 years. I ended up going to a boutique law firm and teaching legal research and writing as an adjunct in the evening. And it informed my teaching so much when I went to Michigan State and I was teaching in a more traditional podium way, teaching trust and estates and property and family law. But I never lost sight of the importance of building skills and building in experiential learning. So I tried to have students draft an estate plan as part of the trust and estates class, or in family law to draft a complaint or a client letter or do a negotiation. And when we think, and we've been doing some curriculum reform here at Brandeis Law, when we talk about it and people talk about skills courses or they talk about doctrinal courses, I say, no one bills in 6-minute increments for a skills task versus a doctrinal task. Right? If you're drafting a client letter and you're billing, the whole point is that the knowledge, that particular knowledge of a case or a statute or a regulation that you're using as the basis to answer a question, for example, it is the combination of that doctrine and skills. So I've always been very cognizant of trying to bridge that doctrinal skills divide. I think more of us in legal education are doing that, and I think that's a really positive development.
Well, I completely agree, having, of course, come from the clinical community. And you mentioned experiential education. So you've arrived at Brandeis, you've been there a couple of years now. What sorts of progress have you made with your team to build out those kinds of experiences that are not built in separate increments?
So as I mentioned, I loved being a clinical professor. I also, as a law student, I participated in a clinic and I found it to be a fabulous experience. So I'm someone who really likes that. And I've been excited to expand our externship program and also just provide a little more support and infrastructure for our externship program by having some additional adjuncts and courses for the professional development class that accompany companies, the externship. So just to make sure that there's more support for students, that we're reaching out to all of the externship supervisors, doing all the things we need to do. But that to me is not a substitute for law clinics. So I was very lucky that Brandeis Law already had a clinic downtown, and downtown is all of about 10 minutes, so it's not particularly far. But we had been renting some space, subleasing from the Legal Aid Society. And the clinic was focused primarily on assisting domestic violence survivors with protective orders and then the concomitant custody, visitation, and so forth. From that, a pilot mediation program had developed where judges in family court were referring some cases for mediation to our clinic. So over the past few years, we have doubled our footprint at the Legal Aid Society. We are subleasing actually a little more than twice the space because we are keeping that mediation clinic. We have a full-time clinician plus a full-time attorney in our domestic violence clinic. We have another visiting professor attorney who has launched a housing clinic, really eviction defense, and they're all in that space partnering and working together. We have, with a different program on campus, a Center for Optimal Aging. We have an elder law clinic that's part-time. We have someone who supervises students a few days a week, and there's an entrepreneurship clinic, and that's in partnership with the business school. So always great to have interdisciplinary programs, given that Brandeis is a fan of, or was a fan of, interdisciplinarity, so we can, live those ideals. And this year, we got to do something that I think is really special, not necessarily unique, but something very exciting for us, which is that the Kentucky legislature awarded us $1.5 million to start an immigration law clinic.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
It really is. It's the first time that the law school had its own line item in the budget. Of course, the state supports the university, and that's fabulous. But it was really exciting to partner with members of the Kentucky Senate and put this together. And that is also housed downtown because we know that people may have issues of safety, issues of immigration, issues of housing. There's just something really exciting about developing our own Brandeis Law Office. I know that our clinicians and our students are excited. They got new T-shirts and other branded items.
T-shirts, man. It's the next level, right?
Right? I mean, it's legit because they have the T-shirt. But it shows that reaching out and just having a conversation can lead to something that you never anticipated. So the president of the Kentucky legislature is one of our alums, and I went to Frankfurt, which is our state capital, to meet him. I had no agenda. I just wanted to meet him and make the connection because I'm trying to go to as many places in Kentucky as I can. It's not a huge state, but we have 120 counties. So, I mean, there's a lot of places to go and lots of alums and so forth. And we were just having a conversation. He said, there's this real issue in Louisville that we do have a very large immigrant population here in Louisville, which honestly I had not known before I relocated here. But we have a huge presence of Catholic charities and Kentucky Refugee Ministries, and there are tens of thousands of immigrants here in Louisville. So there really is need to help with paperwork to process for green cards and ultimately for citizenship, but especially for the requisite papers for work. I'm having a senior moment.
Of course, yeah, the employment paperwork, yeah.
The employment paperwork that is necessary. And so it was wonderful that the legislature had identified a need. And I said, well, I'm always looking for more opportunities for our students to have training to engage in the work that lawyers are doing and to represent clients, possibly go to court or hearings or so forth. And it was wonderful. We have only had 3 students in the clinic this first semester because we're just trying to figure out the best way to move forward and set things up. But even with a full-time clinician and 3 students. We were able to assess almost 50 cases over the course of the semester and
Fantastic.
assist with paperwork for at least 33.
Oh my goodness. That's great impact in the community. And good for you for reaching out to the legislature and for the legislature to support the community in this way, in a way that will help students learn how to do this work in addition. So let's talk about 2 Supreme Court justices. First, you are named after Brandeis, Justice Brandeis. And did I recently see you have a piece of his clothing that was celebrated?
Yes, I am so sorry that I can't show you a picture, right? That this is just audio, but I would be delighted to share photos with anyone who wants to see. On November 16th, just 3 days after Brandeis's birthday, we had a dedication ceremony for one of the robes that he wore while he was a justice on the Supreme Court.
That's so cool. And I see from the picture, I see it's like in a glass case. And was it his son who donated it?
No, it was actually his great grandson who donated it. So, and 2 of his great grandsons came to the law school for the ceremony. It was fabulous to spend some time with them. So, Rick Rausenbusch is the true donor of the robe. He is an attorney in California. And when he graduated from law school in the 1980s, I think it's okay to say that because he said it. I don't think I'm just aging him. When he graduated from law school, it was in the 1980s. I don't want to get the year wrong. His dad, Brandeis's son, gave him the robe as a graduation gift.
And my goodness.
Yeah, and so he's had it all this time. And so, sorry, his dad was the grandson. I knew I was getting something wrong because I said that Rick is the great grandson. So his father is the grandson who got it from Brandeis's daughter, who was his mom. So that's the progression of the robe. But Rick got the robe as a graduation gift, and then I guess one doesn't just wear a Supreme Court justice's robe out and about,
No, I think that's frowned upon.
right? So he ended up having it preserved, whatever the appropriate way is, much like you take care of a wedding dress. We took care of the robe. And yes, it's in a special glass case that is supposed to keep moisture out and all the things. And we're very excited to have that piece of Brandeis history here at the law school.
I love that. That's a great story. But there is a story about a living justice, Justice Sotomayor. Tell us why you're excited about the spring semester and one of our Supreme Court justices.
So, for more than 20 years, the Brandeis School of Law has been awarding the Brandeis Medal to an attorney or judge, someone who really follows in the footsteps of Brandeis, if you will, in terms of really doing well by the community. Louis Brandeis was known as the people's lawyer. So someone who's really committed to individuals, to justice, to community. And several Supreme Court justices have received the medal previously. I am so delighted that Justice Sotomayor will be here in February to be our next recipient of the Brandeis Medal.
Congratulations. I'm sure that your students are super excited to hear from her and that your faculty too is excited to meet her.
There is a lot of excitement here. Yes. I had the pleasure of hearing her speak once before about 10 years ago, and she really is dynamic. She has a way of connecting with her audience that I think is so marvelous and not everyone can do. And when it was time for us to think about the next recipient of the Brandeis Medal, I'll be honest with you, she popped in my head and she was the person. So I'm just so delighted it worked out.
Well, enjoy the preparations for that monumental event for the Brandeis School of Law. Now, what else would you like to share with us about what's going on now at Brandeis or what your plans are and your vision for the upcoming years? You have great bones that you said you're already building on. What else can we see coming from Brandeis in the coming year?
We've had quite a bit of transition, and I think many law schools had transition coming out of the pandemic. where certain faculty were probably already thinking of retirement and made it through the pandemic and then decided, I'm done. So when I got here in 2022, I think 6 people were retiring. I'll be honest, Patty, I'm not sure they told me that during the interview. It was a lot. We're a pretty small school.
That's a lot. They wouldn't mention that probably.
But it has been a fabulous opportunity to hire and bring in new faculty. So we have hired 2 professors of practice, which is something that I know a lot of law schools have, but it was the first time that Brandeis did that. And for a listener not familiar, professor of practice is someone who is a very seasoned attorney, someone who has great experience and is coming in not necessarily to do scholarship, but really to focus on teaching students, provide them with opportunities to network and think about job placement and so forth. So we've had tremendous success with 2 professors of practice. But we also hired a new Grosskreutz chair in intellectual property. We have a good relationship with our School of Engineering, and I think that there's some tremendous potential there. We have 2 faculty members with good IP expertise, and I'm excited to see where our intellectual property curriculum can go. We hired another new faculty member with health law expertise, and particularly as the university has expanded in its health sciences and formed a new relationship with U of L Health, so the hospital system and so forth, that's all just within the past 5 years or so. I think there are tremendous opportunities in health law. We really have been trying to keep an eye on growth areas in Kentucky and beyond. So IP and health. But another one that we realize there aren't enough attorneys in Kentucky for the jobs available in energy, environmental, not necessarily, I don't mean that there aren't enough attorneys, but attorneys with that expertise. So we're just trying to be mindful of these growth areas. And I think those are some things that you'll see come from Brandeis in the next couple of years. We are in the midst of curricular reform and developing curricular pathways, really thinking about what are the required courses, core courses, electives, and experiential learning opportunities within particular subject areas so that students are very well prepared for the career that they would like.
Sounds like some really exciting changes going on. And sometimes out of chaos is opportunity, right? We have had a number of faculty members also ready to retire and have left the academy. And so I just keep reminding myself it's opportunity. It's not focus on the chaos.
You and I had a chance to talk before we started to record, and I think chaos is a piece of the job, and embracing the chaos to a certain extent is part of the job, or else I don't know that we could do it.
I think that's right. I often tell people there's not a single day that I have planned out that ends up the way that it was supposed to in my calendar. I mean, there's just not. There is, and our colleague, the dean at Northwestern, Harry Osofsky, says that she keeps time in her calendar for the surprise of the day. And I thought, well, that is exactly what a great description, because it might be a great surprise, it might be a terrible surprise, but there is always a surprise.
I really feel like when we are done with this interview, I want to go to my calendar and just add surprise of the day and love that.
I do too, and I think that really hits the nail on the head. So before we conclude, I wanted to ask you, now you've been in legal education for decades, you've been a dean at 2 different institutions, and you've seen certainly post-pandemic, but even before that, we've had a lot of changes in the academy. And so what are your predictions of the future or for the future of legal education in the coming decade?
I attended my 30th law school reunion a couple of months ago, and I was reflecting on what my own legal education was like 30 years ago versus what it's like now. And I'm very pleased to say that legal education today, in my view, is far superior to legal education of 30 years ago. And that's because while the Socratic method is a very interesting way to teach, and there you can elicit some good feedback and information, law schools are embracing pedagogy in a way that I'm not sure they always have. That law schools are understanding that there's an entire discipline of the scholarship of teaching and learning that law schools should embrace and not just eschew as we're exceptional, we're different. We just will do it our way. We know that there are benefits to having more assessment in a semester than one final at the end of the semester, for example. We know that integrating skills and doctrine is what lawyers do, so what we should be doing in the classroom. So there are a lot of positive developments already. I think my prediction for the future is that we're going to continue to see much more distance education and distance education opportunities, and that the quality of the distance education will improve because we know that we want, if we're offering asynchronous courses, that they need to have great design, great assessment mechanisms, and so forth. So I think that that is going to continue. And then reading the tea leaves with the ABA accreditation standards, I do think that we'll see a requirement for more experiential learning credit. But I think overall, that's a great thing. It's good for our students to have more experience, but we'll have to think about in practice what that looks like. Is that more clinics, externships, or are we really shifting our courses to make them more experiential so that we can meet that requirement?
Absolutely. And I also went to school about the same time you did, more than 3 decades ago, and it is a much better education. I mean, I think that the way that students get to participate in the activities of being a lawyer while still in school is so important. So I do hope that continues as well. Well, I want to thank Dean Melanie Jacobs of the Brandeis School of Law at the University of Louisville for being with us today. And if you enjoyed this discussion and would like to listen to other thought leaders in the Legal Academy, you can do so on the Aspen Leading Edge podcast webpage or on your favorite podcast channels. Thank you.